This is the Kitchen Sink WP Podcast, episode 446.
I program my own computer.
We have a server crash, 404 error, page not found, links aren't working, system is crashing, system is crashing, system is crashing.
Your old HTML website, barely alive. We have the technology. We have WordPress. A new website, better than it was before. Better, stronger, faster. We have the technology. The technology.
Everyone loves WordPress. Hello, this is Adam Silver, the host of the Kitchen Sink WP Podcast. Thanks for being here. Let's get started. First and foremost, the audio of this episode might be a little off and different than normal, and my voice, because I am actually out here in a hotel room at WordCamp US in San Diego, California. So I apologize for that. If I sound hoarse, it's because there's been a lot of talking and seeing people. We'll talk about that in a second. First, upcoming events as normal. Next week we have WordCamp Netherlands. It's going to be pretty cool, I bet. September 15th and 16th. So if you're in that neck of the woods, you should go. I'm not going. I'm exhausted. So, all right. Moving on. Segment 1 in the news. A few things here. iThemes patched a vulnerability to BackupBuddy. Wordfence did a documentation on this. It tracked 5 million exploit attempts. It's a big number. So if you're running iThemes BackupBuddy, you're going to want to update that for sure. So there's that. And also, is that in the news? Yeah, I guess that is in the news. I have a little longer note here on that, but you can check that in the show notes. There'll be a link in the show notes for that. All right, moving on. Segment 2, WordCamp US 2022. A bit recap and some interviews that I did. So like I said before, I'm recording this from a hotel room, and I'm exhausted. I'm not going to lie. Short recap. WordCamp US in San Diego was mostly great. Literally got here on Wednesday, leaving Sunday morning. And it was good. Great to see all the people we haven't seen in over 2.5 years. A lot of people came from far distances, much farther than me, and it was cool. A lot of happy tears, like I said. So I also had a chance to interview a few people to get some takes, some first-time WordCampers, as I've done in the past. And let's play those now. We'll come back and wrap it up and give you a tip and tool of the week. All right, here they are. All right, today I am sitting down here at WordCamp US with Sally Thune. I said that right?
Yes.
Great.
Thank
Because you
you.
said it's like, see you sooner or later.
Yes.
Love that. You are a first-time WordCamper. Go ahead.
Yes, in person.
Right, in person. Because, and truth be told, full disclosure, you attended WordCamp US virtually.
No,
not
I
virtual.
helped organize 2 previous virtual word camps when COVID hit.
Okay, you were an organizer.
Yeah.
So, but you never attended, technically, in person.
Or spoken.
Or spoken. So we'll get to that in a second.
In person.
In person, right. So I'm going to go ahead with, because of COVID, I don't care about those. Those don't count.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so you are a first-time WordCamper in person.
Okay.
We're sitting here in San Diego, WordCamp US 2022. It is the day 2 of camp. And so the questions for you are this. What made you come to WordCamp US 2022 in person? Why?
Well, I've 2 years ago when I started delving into accessibility and WordPress, I hadn't heard of WordCamp. I hadn't heard of GitHub. I hadn't heard of Awapu.
Okay.
And I kind of heard of a meetup, but I thought it was more like hookup things, and then I heard about accessibility, but I wasn't sure exactly what it was. So I was able to volunteer virtually through COVID, but the fact that it was in San Diego, I live 5-hour drive from here,
Right.
without a flat tire, and I was like, when am I ever going to have this opportunity? It's the first time apparently on the West Coast ever, so I was like, I need to take advantage of this.
Yeah.
So yes, and then I had filled in last minute for a speaker at WordCamp Santa Clarita 2021.
Okay.
And a lot of people had told me they were inspired by my talk. So I was like, okay, I'll apply to speak at WordCamp US, though I was told first-time speakers are rarely ever chosen. And apparently there's 2 first-time speakers here. I don't know who the other one is.
I don't know either.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
myself.
Yeah, this time, I mean, as you know, we met this morning, just
Yes.
FYI for the audience, we met this morning through a mutual friend, Joe Simpson.
Who runs the WordCamp Santa Clarita Valley meetup.
Right. There was a meetup this morning for coffee and some bagels, and we met. And Don't know where I was going to go with that, so I might cut that part out.
Well, Joe's, I call him my guiding light.
Right.
So he was the one that really helped me get involved with accessibility in WordCamp because I learned by doing.
Okay.
So as I was learning, I was like, where can I volunteer? Because, everything kind of stopped. So I can make a difference and help, but also accelerate my skills.
Right.
So he introduced me to the organizers for WordCamp Los Angeles 2020 in October. I came in late as a volunteer wrangler, and that was an amazing experience.
That was one of my first roles at WordCamp LA.
Oh, okay.
I was a photographer first year,
Okay.
volunteer wrangler second year, and lead after that for 2 years.
Right. And I had no idea what to expect.
Yeah,
Well,
you
thank
don't.
you for doing that because it's a
Yeah.
lot of work to
It is.
volunteer and put
Yeah.
these WordCamps on.
Yeah.
And then after Joe did the WordCamp Santa Clarita in 2021 in July and asked me to be on the organizing team again. So I was like, wow, that was an interesting experience coming at the beginning compared to at the end. And then they had a last minute speaker back out.
Right.
And they're like, would you want to talk about your journey? And I was like, what? So Sumner Davenport, who was the lead organizer on WordCamp Santa Clarita Valley, coached me and helped me like 40 hours to finally to record a 15-minute talk. And then I just, when people write me on LinkedIn, because I'm on LinkedIn more than I am Twitter, and tell me how much I inspired them to start their journey,
Right.
it's just like, wow, I am making a difference. So I'll talk again, so hopefully I can inspire more people. And so I applied to WordFest 2022. I was chosen.
Nice.
And so then when WordCamp came up, I almost didn't apply, but I'm like, you know what? I know first-time speakers don't get chosen, but I'm going to apply anyways, and if it's meant to be, it will happen, and if not, it won't.
Would you have come either way?
No, because I wouldn't have had a ticket. They sold out like that.
But that being said, some people did cancel and there were tickets available.
Yes, but
So-
I didn't know that. Like I didn't know what to expect coming here. I'm
Okay.
just coming here with open
Yeah.
arms and eyes. And
for full disclosure, for those who don't know, the tickets usually for WordCamp US are usually 2,000 to 3,000 people. Wow. Not dollars, but it's $50
right.
to come.
Yeah.
This is the first WordCamp in 8 years for me that I actually am not a volunteer, not an organizer, just attending. I paid the $50. It's still worth it to me. I want to ask you about that in a second. But normally WordCamp US is 2,000 to 3,000 people.
Wow.
WordCamps, local ones, vary based on how much community involvement there is. They can be as small as 100 people, upwards of, I think like WordCamp Miami was about 800 people.
Wow.
It's a big community. Los Angeles, I think the highest was about 450, 500.
Okay.
So this camp is 650.
Right.
So it's in that realm of smaller for US.
Right.
So, and I mentioned that for this reason. You've been here now for 2 days.
Yes.
What's your take? What's your takeaway for someone who doesn't know, who's never been to a WordCamp and who's never been to a WordCamp US, which is, WordCamp US is once a year. WordCamps are every weekend.
Right.
Without COVID.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's your takeaway? What have you seen or been surprised about? Like,
I just, it has been so amazing because the one thing I always say in my talks is how welcoming the WordPress community is. And they're not here to judge you. They want to help you. I'm a newbie. I mean, I used to work with WordPress developers for my digital marketing agency. And then after COVID hit, I was like, okay, I was too busy to build a website. I'm like, I need a website. I want to do it myself. And so I joined my first WordPress meetup in Bakersfield. And, everyone said you need to go to a WordCamp. Like it's nothing like the meetups or virtual. And coming here, I was a little intimidated. I'm not a developer, but you know what? It doesn't matter. Everyone is just so welcoming. We have, a common goal. And now I have a WordPress shirt. I have my first WAPU pin, and people are just, I sat last night at dinner with 2 friends that I've made virtually because I've met so many people in the last 2 years virtually. I've attended over 120 meetups.
right.
And to meet them in person, it's like I've known them my entire life, and to be able to hug them and talk with them. And we were talking coding and everything, and I'm still learning HTML because it's the code for accessibility. And when I wrote my first Hello World, I was so excited, like a little kid, and I'm like late 50s, right?
Nice.
And everyone smiles, and it's not clicky. That's one thing I've really noticed that I really like. Everyone is talking to everyone.
I will say there are people who know each other really well. We've been around, I've been around a long time, but it's still really open.
Very much.
And very much in the sense of, if I see somebody by themselves walk up towards a group that I'm talking to, we open ourselves up. That's the difference versus like a trade show or different industries where it's going to be kind of closed off. It's hard to break through.
Yeah.
It takes time. People also, I think, understand that there are introverts inside of this community, that this is uncomfortable for them. So we try to make it even more welcoming. So.
And based on that, coming here, I was very nervous. I'm not a developer. Everyone's developers and can like run code in circles around me. I've never been. I knew all these relationships were already formed. People have been coming for a long time, but it hasn't mattered. And before I spoke yesterday, I was super nervous. And Kim, I don't want to say her last name in case I say it wrong, on the organizing team was really great. And she said to me, Sally, remember, we're all here, we're all rooting for you, and it's a room full of mostly introverts.
Right.
And I was like,
I always tell people when they go to speak for the first time, because I've spoken a lot, I tell people, nobody in the audience wants you to fail. Simple as that. It's in your head, which is easier said than done, but nobody wants you to fail.
Right.
So just to take that moment, be present, and just do your thing. You know.
It's life-changing because I was in broadcast sales and for a long time, and it's very cutthroat, and no one wants you to succeed. There's a lot of jealousy and backstabbing, and to come into this whole new world, I feel like I found my people.
Right.
Like my late Auntie Lizzie always said to me my whole life growing up, we're not here to see through each other, but to see each other through.
Nice.
And that epitomizes what the WordPress and accessibility community is all about.
Nice.
And I just feel grateful, like I'm 2 years in, and I still have a lot to learn. It's a continuous journey, but everyone is just great, and people came up and liked my talk. And this morning, Sarah Cannon mentioned my talk in her design accessibility talk, and I was like, oh my goodness, and it's like everyone supports each other.
Right.
I'm walking out of here a different person, a better person, I think.
And I think that's the best place to end right now. Thank you again for coming on the show.
Okay.
And hope to see you at future WordCamps in person.
Definitely.
Thanks.
I can't wait.
Okay.
Thanks.
I am now sitting here at WordCamp US 2022 with Ben Scroggs. Welcome to the podcast, Ben.
Thanks so much. I appreciate you having me on.
And for full disclosure, we just met literally about 9.5 minutes ago.
Very true.
I put out the tweet yesterday looking for first time WordCampers, as my audience knows. A mutual friend introduced us, Emily Hunkler?
Yep.
It's Emily from GoWP. Anyway, so the reason I brought you up here to talk is to get your experience. What made you come to WordCamp US 2022 in person?
Thank you so much for asking. I work with Nexus and Liquid Web, right? I manage the partner team over there. So for us, making a personal appearance, especially after 2 years of COVID, right? Being under wraps for what feels like a year and a half without personal interaction in so many different cases, other than the occasional visits to see people, individual customers, right? Being at a conference where you can meet so many different people from so many different walks of life, and being able to share experiences across the board from a WordPress perspective, their interactions, our interactions, and understanding their personal experiences, their business experiences. For us, that makes a real difference, making that human interactive connection.
Absolutely. And normally I don't have people from a vendor perspective on, or you're a sponsor. You guys are sponsors and you're a vendor. So do you see the ROI? I'm curious, because people always ask, what's the ROI? Or is it a longer play?
It has more to do with, in many cases, right, establishing the relationship. Sometimes it's meeting an existing relationship.
Right.
So the ROI is already there.
Okay.
And it's an enhanced ROI in that case. Other times it's making new connections, where in that case, you never had that type of interaction. You never had that ability to meet them in person and develop it. And there is no substitute for meeting someone in person.
Absolutely.
There really isn't. So being able to be here in person and meet so many different people from so many experiences and walks of life. I always say everyone has a different success story.
Right.
So for me to hear those, I find fascinating.
It makes a difference.
It does.
I mean, it's funny thinking about it. I just realized when you said Nexus, how many people I know at the company. I mean, Michelle Frechette, the GiveWP team, all those people are amazing people. And of course, not sadly, what people don't realize in the community is the amount of, working from a place of abundance versus scarcity. Your booth will be right next to a competitor, but there's no fear of that.
It's all collaborative.
Right.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that, because we were over at the Jetpack booth,
Right.
talking to the guys over there, just having a blast, meeting up. A lot of times, especially in the partner space, which
Right.
is kind of where we are,
Right.
because we manage the partners. A lot of times partners will have certain unique needs. And those needs, you do your best to fulfill, right? You either create a new product or you have a product that might fit, but if you don't, and it's a complementary organization, or if it's an organization you can connect them with,
Right.
there's a lot of value there. So having those relationships with all different types of vendors, and it's a very small, tight-knit community.
Right.
Even though there's a lot of activity involved in it. But having those relationships makes a real difference, especially when you're trying to help partners in a variety of different ways.
Right. So let me ask you this then. From that perspective of as a sponsor and a vendor, you've been using WordPress for how long yourself?
About 3 generic use, but I would say roughly about 3 years.
Okay.
Basics.
Do you think if you weren't a sponsor, would you still come?
If I wasn't a sponsor, I think I would come, but from a different perspective.
Which perspective?
It would be from a perspective of understanding how to dive in and get the message of my specific platform. Because at that point, I'd probably be using it for business purposes.
Right.
As in many cases, so many different developers are here.
Right.
So in that case, using it for more of a viral perspective. The marketing, the functionality of it.
Right.
And making sure it got to a wider audience.
It's a valid point. I mean, and that's why I asked, because we all come into, business with different needs and purposes. You're here for relationship building. I'm here for relationship building, but in a different way.
Yeah.
It really is,
Exactly.
I mean, it makes sense that way. So let's say a competitor reached out to you who's new to the space, or let's say a new competitor, if you will.
Sure. Someone new to the market.
Right. And they said, hey, should we go to WordCamp XYZ or US next year? What would you say?
Absolutely.
Really?
Well, the value of the personal interaction, right? There's
Yeah.
so many opportunities to meet so many different varieties of
Yeah.
of people,
Right.
different walks of life, and different businesses.
Right.
And from a startup perspective, so many different startups get their shot by starting with the basics.
Right.
And this is one of the best ways to do that. I mean,
Yeah.
think about how much knowledge that you gain over a couple of days
Right.
with so many different perspectives of people that you work with. Like,
More often than not, I hear from new-time WordCampers, users usually, it's a fire hose.
Yeah.
And they don't know what to do with the information. So I always tell people, when you go home, take a day, and then just to relax, take half a day, and then write down, or just write down things before you forget.
Yeah.
Take notes. But it's a fire hose, and sometimes it's almost too much. And like I had an interview earlier today, WordCamp US is traditionally 3 times the size of this one. This is the first one we've had in 2.5 years, so it's at 650. Normally it's 2,500 to 3,000 people. Local WordCamps, which you haven't been to one yet.
right.
So when you do a local, let's say San Antonio where you're based, or you go to any other city for that matter, the size is based on the scale of the community at hand, from the meetup, right? Or meetups. Like Los Angeles WordCamp is going to be 450, 500, that kind of scale.
Which makes
Raleigh
sense.
the same. Miami's 800, bigger community. So yeah, it's just interesting, but I just think you're right. I think the value's there, the fire hose is there, but it's nice to hear from a vendor and sponsor perspective that you're still cool with new people coming in. That might be a direct competition.
Well, you want to be. I mean, a lot of times you never know what's going to happen in the industry.
Right. Mergers, acquisitions.
Yeah, and over the course of 2, 3, look how much technology changes over time. I mean, originally, all the older technology you had with Palm Centros and the styluses, and you lose the stylus.
You
and
just
couldn't
age
get it.
yourself, man. That's awesome.
So in a case like that, and as a caveat to what you mentioned too, when people get home, right, the decompression part,
Right.
understanding at that point, because they're going to pick it back up,
Right.
but knowing who to go to,
Right.
knowing who to call. So whenever someone, and as a future statement, whenever someone attends a WordCamp, not just picking up the information, but also picking up contact information.
Right.
Because when they do pick it up, back up, they're going to want somebody to call, and
Yep.
they're going to want that type of support. So
Yeah.
having that available makes a huge difference to continue the momentum.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. So any advice to somebody considering coming, either from a user perspective, designer, educator, podcaster, or even a sponsor? Any piece of wisdom?
It's very informal, which I was not expecting.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great place to meet a lot of people, hear a lot of success stories, and also hear things to avoid. That's always a good idea as
Yeah.
a startup, right? What do
Right.
I need to avoid?
Right.
And also, depending on your industry or your vertical or your perspective, where you might want to focus, because there are people who have done it before you. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Get out there and hear people's stories and where they were a success and where they weren't successful.
Right.
And then as you trade those stories, stay in contact.
It's a great place to end. Thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, I am sitting outside at the after party, now called the Social the WordCamp Social 2022, WordCamp US. I'm sitting with Michael Likens. He literally just walked by me, sat down, we introduced ourselves to each other, and he's a first-time WordCamper. So welcome to the podcast, Michael.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
Of course. So I'm curious to get your take on WordCamp. What do you do? Tell us briefly, what do you do with WordPress to start?
Sure. So I'm here with Pathfinder SEO. We help web agency owners and marketing agency owners all for SEO. Most of our customers build websites for people, and they mostly do that using WordPress. So we're pretty WordPress adjacent with this. We're not doing anything with it ourselves, but most of our customers are really tied into the ecosystem.
And so you work with Lindsay Halsey?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Lindsay and Lori, the founders of Pathfinder, and they invited me out. It was my first WordPress event ever.
Great. So being your first, and you've done 2 days now.
Yes.
What's your take?
Oh, it's been a great time. Lots of really cool presentations. It was nice just getting to hear people talk about things I had no clue about. Just finding out about theme.json and stuff like that. It's really cool to get more details on that. It's not directly related to what I'm doing, but it's always nice to learn more about these these spaces that you're at least adjacent to. Seems like a good crowd. Always a good time. Everybody's got a smile on their face. That's always nice. Tons of sponsors was really cool. I didn't know I'd walk away with here with a whole entire new wardrobe. I got more pairs of socks that I can deal with now. I'll never buy another T-shirt again, honestly. So it's been a fun time though. The venue's really cool. The location was sweet. I've never been out to San Diego either, so it was really cool to just new experience. First time ever meeting my coworkers. I've worked remote with them for 2 years. And it's first time ever meeting them. So just been a lot of firsts for this trip. So it's been really nice.
Any big surprises as far as going to a WordCamp, going to this type of conference?
Yeah, I didn't know, surprise is hard to say because I didn't have any expectations, you know what I mean? Because I had no clue what it'd be. The setup for it from Lindsay and Laura is you'll just have a good time. We're attending, we didn't have a booth, we weren't presenting or anything like that. So she's just hey, it's kind of a work vacation, right? Just come out, meet some people, have fun. So not surprise-wise, I guess, but just interested to, I guess what is surprising though is the amount of community here. It's just you can tell that there's a ton of people who are super into this, and you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't know unless you go to this kind of stuff. So we start to see what the actual community looks like. It's okay, wow, these there's people in this. WordPress is a big thing. A lot of people are into it.
Awesome. All right, we have a helicopter going over us now, so sorry for the weird audio for this episode. I do apologize to my audience. Any last comments, anything you would tell somebody who's thinking about coming to a WordCamp that you would give advice about attending one?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely come out to one of these. If you are at all even adjacent, like I said, we're not dealing with WordPress that much. We're just adjacent to it, but it was still super interesting. So if you're kind of in the space at all, to any capacity, I'd recommend coming out to something like this, even if it's running your own blog or you got a client or two that use WordPress. Come out to this kind of stuff because there's more topics than just it's not just how to use WordPress. There's all kinds of other stuff going on. People are talking about brand identity. People are talking about troubleshooting in WordPress. There's the history of images. That was a really cool presentation. There's all kinds of stuff here completely related. So if you're at all adjacent to web development or just to see open source communities, I'd highly recommend coming out to something like this because I don't know, it's a fun time. You're gonna meet cool people, have a couple drinks, and enjoy yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate the feedback.
No problem. Thanks for having me on the spot. Podcast is the first time I've ever been on a podcast. I appreciate it. It's been a great time.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And awesome, really, really fun talking to all three of those people. That last one at the after party, that was cool. Sorry for the extra noise in the background, and I think there was a helicopter. Anyway, yeah, just really cool to see people experience WordCamp for the first time, and I think they're excited to come back as well. So, wrapping up, one last thing before I wrap up on this segment is I also won something many years ago. Some of you may know I won a TV at WordCamp Phoenix. I actually won a monitor from Cloudways. So I think that's cool. Shout out to Cloudways. I actually use them for my staging server, so that's very cool. Got to meet Jason Nickerson and whatnot and the team there, so it's kind of neat. And they're going to ship it to me because I'm across the country, so that's very nice of them. So, all right, moving on, segment 3, tip and tool of the week. This week's tip is if you didn't make it out here and you didn't watch the live streams, you should go check the talks out at WordPress TV because I only went to like one talk, honestly. I was just more the hallway track, more just connecting with people again. And yeah, so I'm gonna have to go back and watch a handful of the talks over on WordPress.tv. So check that out as well. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up here. If you have any questions, go ahead, send it in via email, adam@KitchensinkWP.com, or use that speak pipe function on the website. If you want to support the show, you could become a Patreon. That'd be fantastic. You could also sponsor the show. There's a form on the website for that too. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Now go out and do some awesome things with WordPress. All right, bye-bye.